Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of F It with Aikisha and Willie Cologne.
Fuck it.
The F is not for fuck. Like, why? Why do you keep saying fuck it?
How else do you say fuck it?
How do you say it?
F it.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think by now, we've had about 5 episodes, and I think they know that the F is not going to be fuck it.
I think people assume we don't want to say the fuck part, so I say it, but they interpret it as fuck it.
No.
Which politely, you politely say F it.
Well, they know that there's a different F every week. And this week's F word is, I guess I want to say it's a serious one. I mean, it's serious because of the current situation that is happening and what happened. So, guys, this week we are going to discuss the F word, fraternity.
I agree. Fraternity.
Yes, fraternity. And Willie is a member of a fraternity, and I am a member of a sorority. And in the recent news, we have heard and been watching a story that a death that occurred in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, by a student, Caleb Wilson. He was a student at Southern University. The incident did not happen on campus, but it did happen due to him pledging a fraternity that has a chapter at the school of Southern University.
Do we not want to say fraternity and sorority?
Well, everybody knows now that is the fraternity that you're a member of.
Yeah, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Yes. And it wasn't that I wasn't saying it. It's just I really hate when situations like this happen and it just goes to a negative aspect of organizations that were not founded on these principles.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, and so it's not the first time that it's happened. And but each time it's just heartbreaking. And then it's like it takes us so many steps back and having to face this issue of hazing.
Yeah, it's troubling, right? Because I think the reports are coming out, and a lot of things are troubling from the standpoint that the young man had a bright future. He was a part of the Southern band.
Engineer. I looked up
engineer major.
Yeah, and
comes from a great family. His father actually was the head security.
I think for the owner, the owner of the New Orleans Saints.
Right, and so the Saints actually came out with
their condolences,
sending their condolences.
Yeah.
Sending their condolences. So it's troubling from this standpoint. And I was thinking about this when we were talking about it. You know, for me, I'm a proud member. I'm extremely proud of my process and my line brothers and my DP and my ADP. I'm proud that I went through Iota Phi in Pittsburgh. I'm proud of the fact that I am amongst, I'm a part of an organization right now, a fraternity, that really, if you talk about principles, stand on really just being trailblazers, being men of the community, protecting womanhood.
And as all of them, you know, that D9, it means something to us.
Right. But let me finish. So I want to finish. The reason I was saying this is as somebody who played professional football, I get asked the question all the time, would you allow your son to play football? Knowing everything that comes with playing the game of football. And I always say yes, if it's his passion. And I will explain to him the seriousness of playing football from on any level, right? They're like, you can't half step playing football. And now this adds another layer because people are now going to ask me, with everything that comes along with pledging or being a part of a process, would you allow your son to be a part of this fraternity? And now that's something I never thought about. I never thought about for potentially pledging it or being a part of the fraternity because I was like, yeah, why not? I'm proud. I want him to be a part of it. But now, because of the careless nature and the things and the stories that you're just talking about, now I have to think about that. And
like if you would want him
if I would want my son
pledge Omega Psi Phi.
Right. And, you know, I'm extremely proud of my DP, Hassan Sharif, and my ADP, Dev, because Not one time during my process did I feel unprotected, or I was amongst people who didn't have my best intentions. And when you hear some of the stories and details that came out of the story, it's like, man, like how did we get here?
Yeah. And I'm with you because I think of my process of being initiated into my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And Willie and I both had two different experiences. I pledged undergraduate in college at an HBCU, and those in the D9, sometimes like that means something, for you to have gone undergraduate and I'm single letter Sigma chapter, so that was a big deal. And to be at an HBCU. My process, it was a fulfilling one. It was a long one, and it was a hard one. I'll be honest about that.
It wasn't given; it was earned.
Yeah, it was earned.
Right.
And I also come from a chapter that had a lot, and still does have a lot of tradition. There were certain things that we wanted, that you want to be handed or passed down to you. There are certain things about your individual chapter and your charter members and, traditions and songs and steps and chants that we do just in Sigma chapter. And you want to learn, you want to earn that, if that makes sense. But earning it does not always mean having it being beat into you. And it seems like over the years, and I know this has probably gone on forever. I'm just only speaking on my experience. It just seems like, I was initiated into this sorority in the 90s. And it's like as time has gone on, so many things have happened and so many things have changed that we've lost the tradition that was started, I know, with my chapter in 1931 and even from the beginning in 1913 for us. And, not to cut you off, but it's because you get people, it's not the organization. And it's not always necessarily the chapter. You will have a couple of people inside of the organization that came into the organization and allowed their membership into it to become a sort of like a power, what is the word am I looking for? Just like a power.
It's an ego trip.
Yes, like a power trip. That's the exact thing I'm trying to say. So they came in, and sometimes the things that you see some of these people doing to new initiates, it wasn't even done to them. But when you're interested in an organization, and I can specifically speak being an undergraduate, it's one of those things that sometimes you're willing to do any and everything because you want to be a part of it. But that does not mean losing your integrity, your character, morally, who your parents poured into you and raised you to be. And I've just seen a lot of our tradition and a lot of what our organizations were founded upon go down into just nothing because you have incidents like this and a few bad apples or a few people who come in on this power trip and ruin it for everyone.
Well, which leads me to my next question, and this is directed to you. Do you feel it's time that these schools, HBCUs, PWIs, remove fraternity and sorority life off campus? And because there's enough city chapters, there's enough chapters around the country where they can police and better kind of make sure this process doesn't end up in a deadly situation or people aren't put in harm's way. Do you feel like this should be taken off campus?
No, I think that for me, it was a part of campus life. Mm-hmm. I loved, once I was initiated into my sorority, being able to come on campus, wearing my jackets, wearing my letters. But we were so involved in campus life, in the community, voter registration, getting students who had, you've turned 18 when you're coming into your freshman year. So there were so many things that I loved through my sorority, a part of my undergraduate experience that no, I think that's a part of going to college. It's not for everyone.
It's not, but I mean, at some point, history has repeated itself.
But let me just say this because people say I cut you off, and that's not what I'm trying to do. I want to say that I think the leaders of these organizations are doing the best that they can with these hazing, cutting out, I mean, having these hazing, anti-hazing laws, or what's the word I am looking for? We have them like clause and consequences
Sure.
that happen to you when you
Cross the
participate,
line.
when you
Yeah.
cross the line, when you participate in hazing.
And there's a no, by the way, and this goes with all fraternities, so there's a no hazing rule. So
And
we
yes,
don't believe in hazing. We don't stand for it. And it has been abolished.
yeah. And I think this is about to change it for everyone. And like you said, I actually think it's some of these schools are about to get rid of our organizations on their campus.
Well, this is the reason so there's a couple of things. One, having gone through my process, and once I crossed over, there is this perception, if you don't go through what others have gone through, you will be judged. And
yeah, we call it your CAT. Oh, they had a paper process. You have
Sure.
CAT. So there's a lot of pressure with that.
There's a lot of pressure with that, and on top of that, there's also this other lane where you see, because of, I know, for instance, there's people in my own chapter, because they had a hard and maybe tumultuous process, that there's a get back, right? There's a situation where, like, well, I went through XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make sure you get through the same way I got through. And for me, like I said, I'm extremely proud of my DP and ADP, and I'm extremely proud of the bros that came in the house and actually protected all of us, but made sure we was put through in the right way, and whatever that means. And I know that comes with some stigmatizations, but nevertheless, I just feel like I get worried because people who aren't financial, people who hold grudges, people with egos, people who necessarily don't have the best intentions of the fraternity and sororities are around people who are trying to become a part of the fraternity.
Yeah. And
there's no policing them, because like I know, when you're on set and I have a young DP and there's an old DP from like 77 and he walks on the set, he's not respecting the DP. And if your DP doesn't have, and DP means
Dean of, I was just about to say that. I didn't want to cut you up. DP, we're referring to the Dean of Pledges. So they're over the actual line that is being initiated into the organization.
Right. So if you have a young DP who maybe doesn't hold the same weight of an old bruh, and he comes on set and he's a part of everything, he's going to overstep and maybe step on that DP. And so a lot of these young DPs may have a line, but now they adhere to
and
the legacy and the people who come before them.
I honestly think
that's a lawless feeling.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I don't know all of the detail to this story, but it was like when you and I were talking about it, I could see that playing out. You have a young DP. These are, they're on campus, and then you have older fraternity brothers or sorority sisters, however, come in. They want to see the line. If your line is not able to, like we say, spit off the information that they need to spit off, whether it's your founders or whatever they may be doing, you're representing that DP. So he will allow the courtesy of the older bras or the older sorors to come in to see their numbers, to see what, the line knows and what you've done. But I guess the question comes in is, where do you cross the line? When do you say, out of, all due respect, big sister or big brother, I'm responsible for this line. So if something happens to one of these young men or one of these young women, I'm going to be accountable for that.
Correct.
And it's really hard when your DP is 19, 20 years old and you're coming up against a big brother who you would think has gotten through all of this and past all of this to be coming back. I mean, there's certain traditions. I'm not going to even sit up here and act like, I haven't, gone and met, been excited to meet the new initiatives, and we talk to each other and you find out about them and where they're from and see that you have commonalities. That's one thing to do, but to come and want to physically put harm to someone because you feel they're not up to your standard, that's crossing the line.
Yeah,
and that's personal.
Well, yeah, I mean, the young man, first of all, the young man that passed away, they were in an abandoned warehouse. He was on set, got punched in the chest multiple times. And He ended up having a seizure, rushed to the emergency room, and he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And you know,
and that's another thing. You don't know what anybody's preconditions are
right.
when you're doing these things. You know, and you
Well,
don't
you
want to
only know
seem
what they
weak.
tell you.
I was just about
Yeah.
to say, you only know what they tell you because they don't want, especially with I'm thinking with the guys, you don't want to seem weak. You want to feel like you're strong and you can get through this. Because one thing, you know, we learn, you do go through a process of humbling yourself and building yourself back up. And it is so disheartening because, like I said, when you and I were talking about it, I could see an older bruh, someone who maybe recently graduated, somebody coming back, and this young man trying to prove that he can handle whatever this physical abuse clearly was that they were given.
Well, there's a process and everything. And I think, especially when it comes to being a part of a fraternity like Omega, there is this hyper masculine, hyper tough that we are the ones who can endure with the roughest, toughest, baddest of all in the land. And I think as you continue to go and watch and be around the fraternity, man, you realize that a lot of these brothers, once they cross over, there's a sense of like, man, I'm not fooling with you because I remember what happened online, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a division in itself. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a healing period. And sometimes that healing doesn't happen because once you cross over and you go and you kind of continue to work for your fraternity and be a part of whatever, man, there's still this like, man, I remember what happened online. I remember what you did to me and said to me. I'm not necessarily over that. And if you never have that kind of healing, that carries on. And that goes for every individual that goes through this process. And so that's a whole nother layer that kind of holds the fraternity back and the sorority back from healing and growing.
Yeah. And it's like sometimes I wonder, do you think we're going in a direction of what you just said, where campuses are going to be like, we're not doing this undergraduate process anymore. And if you want to be a part of these organizations, you have to go through the alumni chapters because, you know,
I'm not saying I don't think I'm against it. I don't think because I have a son, right? And
you're also from a city though where you guys do citywide chapters. For me, I'm not there.
Yeah, I disagree. I rather my son be in the hands of an adult who's financially responsible and upholds the principle and morals and ethical code of what the fraternity stands for. Because you're right, you're putting our you're putting our babies in the hands of other babies. That are only maybe a year or two removed from them. And so I can't, like, I put myself in that father's eyes. Here I am on the job thinking my son is about to cross, which I'm extremely excited. I remember when one of my fraternity brothers, who I call my uncle Jimbo, and his son Patrick crossed, and I was there for the ceremony, and I could see the pride in his eyes. It was almost like he felt completed. Now his son is a part of the fraternity. And I remember sitting in the back of the room like, man, that meant the world to that man. And me put myself in his shoes, if he ever got a call that his son, there was an incident online or something, that would have broke that man. It would break me if something happened to my son on the football field, let alone pledging. And so I'm sitting, and my daughter too, for Christ's sakes. I can't forget Holly. So I'm sitting here saying to myself, it's time for us to adjust because that's what life is about. The old way and the culture, it may have been, I don't know what it was in the past because I wasn't there. But all I know is the stories that continue to come out and the stories that continue to put out and be in the representation of the D9, some of them aren't good. And so we now have to put our babies who we want to cross and continue to carry the sororities and fraternities and continue to impact the communities and
carry our legacies
and carry on the legacy. It's time we put them in the hands of people who get it and understand it and who have weight within their own chapters.
Yeah. So you're saying not for the schools. I mean, I guess this is what I'm saying. Not for the schools to get rid of them, but having the alumni chapters in the city to come through and help with the process of getting these girls through.
I'm saying yes, but I because like I've heard you say this in cross in talking. People who pledge the alumni chapters or grad chapters, these aren't folks who have nothing to do. These folks work, have families, and are professionals. So there's a different mindset because one, they're not going to lose their job, right? They're not going to put themselves or their families at risk. You know what I mean? Because listen, I love Omega, you love Delta, but they don't pay the bills.
Right.
And so I just think right now, the way the culture is, the way more and more kids are signing up and want to be a part of sororities and fraternities, there's these alumni chapters and grad chapters who I feel have more adults and more people who care about the chapters, the reputation, and what the fraternity stand for. Other and I don't want to be like you said, I didn't go through undergrad, right? I went through grad, so I have a different. I'm looking through it through a
Different
different lens.
perspective. Yeah.
So I remember when I was going line, man, I was standing in front of grown men, older men, right, who only wanted to see me go through the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Would make sure I knew what the hell I was doing, knew what I was talking about, and once I crossed over, that I wasn't just doing it as a notch on the belt. That was going to continue to work for Omega,
Mm-hmm.
and there was lessons and teachings along the way that I had to learn. So yeah, I want my son to go through that, but I don't, I understand the campus life. I understand that comes with it. But now, why like that story crushed me because I couldn't imagine that phone call. I just couldn't.
Yeah, I don't even want to imagine that phone call because I remember even when my niece Asia was going through, and Asia is like my daughter. I taken a hand in raising her because my sister passed when she was a little girl. So I do remember having the conversation with you. And, we're not allowed, of course, to reach out to, down there to the chapter or whatever.
Right.
But I just wanted to make sure that it was very clear. And however that message got to the chapter that, basically if something happens to my daughter, I'm not coming down here as your soror. Coming down here as a mother.
Fucking right.
And however you want to take that. And so and I want Holly to be a part of this organization that Asia and I both love dearly. I'm a financial member. I am in a chapter. I'm an active member. So I'm not just sitting up here talking and putting stuff out here like you see people who are, putting their 2 cents on these stories. And I love Delta. I love what it stands for. I love my process. I love my DP. I love my chapter. And I love Clark Atlanta University. And it really hurt me because I'm an advocate and I love HBCU life and culture and what it means to us as a people, what it means to our students, and to see something like this happen with a process that was supposed to be a rich one and a learning one, and telling him about organizations that were started and founded because we weren't allowed to be in the other organizations.
Right.
We weren't even, they didn't even want us to be educated. So you have a group of young men and women on the campuses of Howard University or Indiana University,
Right.
and, Cornell, and who came together and built something and founded something that was for the betterment of our people and our community. And to take all of that and it be just basically put in this category of, if you do this, you possibly could die. You could be killed, or it doesn't even sound right in the same sentence to me.
It doesn't belong
when
in
I
the
think
same
of
sentence.
yes, when I think of the organization that I devoted and committed my life to.
I do think from both of our standpoints, considering we both kind of took two different lanes. Once again, undergrad, I went through grad. I do think there has to be a different level of education when it comes to handling this lines, right? Because I think I think a lot of people who are in charge of this process, they deal with trying to hold the traditions of the old and also
Yes.
protecting the young bros who are coming in, and on top of being respected themselves, right? And so there's a lot. So I think you take away that pressure, and you start really saying to the powers that be, all right, what are we doing? What do we want to get out of this? What are we trying to uphold? And how do we make sure our traditions and our rituals and everything we stand for are set out in the right way? And I think, I don't know, man. I just outside of, obviously I have extreme empathy for the family, so I wouldn't feel any type of way, honestly, if they did remove these sororities and fraternities from these campuses.
And see that, I guess that's where we differ because of our processes. Because you came into the organization, into a graduate chapter, And that was me being initiated. An undergraduate, it was a part of my campus life and my college life. And I do want that for my children. And listen, I'm not taking away from anyone's process. I'm not saying that if you were initiated undergraduate or, that makes you better than someone who was initiated graduate chapter, or if you were initiated graduate chapter, you were dumb to do it undergraduate. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for me and my experience, and just growing up in an era where I watched Different World, and even before that in the late 80s with School Days and all of that, like that was a part of the culture for me. I remember they had a stepping show that came on BET. And I remember every year, AJ Johnson was the host of that show. And every year, like the Sigmas from Clark Atlanta University side chapter would win. And shout out to Chaka Zulu and Sai, because they would be on there. So that was something that I looked forward to when I was going to college, looking into these organizations and seeing which one spoke to me. And like I said, Greek life is not for everyone. We went through this whole era not too long ago where everybody was denouncing their fraternities and sororities and saying, they still do. And of course, situations and occurrences like this do not help.
Yeah, I hate it, and not to cut you off, I hate it because it allows people. I heard Jim Jones make a comment like, "What's the difference between fraternities and gangs?" The same thing. I think it's a huge difference.
Yes.
Like, there's not even two different worlds, right? We're not. But then it allows people to
make comments like that when when stuff like this happens. So, to what you were saying, I definitely would not want them to be removed from campus life, but I would be open to, the city chapters handling the initiation process. And I can't even believe that I'm saying that because, back when if grad chapter came in, that means something really had been going on. Chapters had been suspended, or your chapter got in trouble for doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing. But in order to keep from this happening again, like you said, the people in these graduate chapters, they have families, they have lives and careers that they're not going to risk over dumb shit.
Right.
I think about how many lives have been changed from this one bad decision. Not only just the victim, the one and his family. You have a son who's in college. You're expecting him to graduate and go on to do amazing things. So they've lost a life. But then you think of the young men who were there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them who may not even had anything to do with it, but they were there and they saw it happen. You think of the young men who were online with him, who I don't know if they're going to be forever lamps, whatever you guys are called when you're online. I don't know. I mean, what's their process? So that's done. The men who I know, I would hope he didn't come in with the intentions of killing. And it's manslaughter. It's what is it? Accidental death.
Yeah, whatever it is.
It's done, and you're about to go to jail.
Go to prison.
Yes, you're going to prison along with the other guys who, they're coming in with their new arrests every day. And so that, for me, to see these young Black men who are college educated men, they've changed the trajectory of their entire lives. Yeah. And that's not what our organizations were founded on. You have, brotherhood with you guys and scholarship. You have sisterhood and scholarship and uplift. Manhood, service.
Perseverance.
Yes. Yeah. Social action. And no one is going to speak of those things. They're only going to go back to situations like this.
I mean, even on the campus of Southern, they tore up the what do you call those on the yard? The plaques.
Plots. We call them plots.
Yeah, they destroyed them. The Omega one, they tore them apart. So there's already vandalism going on because of everything that's going on thus far. And I understand, like, Greek culture, especially in the South. I just came from Houston, and I was all around the city. You see people wearing their Kappa sweaters. You see people wearing their Omega sweatshirts.
I mean, it's a huge deal for us down south.
It's a way of life for a lot of people, and you know, like I said, I'm supportive of my fraternity. I'm proud of my process. I'm proud of Iota Phi, my line, and everybody that was a part of my process. What scares me now is me being a father, and that because you and I know we go back, we go back and forth between Jersey and Mississippi, and you're very much entrenched into what it means to be a Delta, and I'm very much entrenched in what it means to be an Omega, man. And as we sit here, we want our kids to watch us and embody what we embody, right? And so we want to go to the picnics, we want to go to the shows, we want to go to anything and everything that has to offer. So when their time comes to be a part of Omega or Delta, they know it's in their blood. And most folks join because it's what they know, because they're granddaddy and daddy and on and on. So, but now, now I have to teach my son a different lesson. Like, you don't need this to be somebody.
No, and it's not, and you don't need it, but you don't have to. In order to teach me or for me to learn the tradition or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be violent.
Correct.
And that's what, I mean, may be different in the fraternities than the sorority. Well, I mean, there's some sororities that go through and do, have done some dumb things. And there have been young ladies that have lost their lives over,
right. But that's, you're hitting it right on the head, babe. Every chapter in every city has a horror story. And it takes right now, once again, because of this horror story that happened down in Southern, for each fraternity and everybody and all their members to look themselves in the mirror and be like, what the hell's going on? How are we here again? And so the only solution is get more eyes on processes, get more people involved in it.
I know Delta's doing it. Like, they're not playing.
Like, at some point, do you limit how many processes go throughout? Like, I don't know. Like, there has to be, it has to be a changing of the guard right now, because from the time of my eldest bro to the youngest, everybody that's a part has heard a story that they don't necessarily tell in public or talk about amongst other people, because they know it's the bad side of the process. And so how do we start eliminating those stories so that when we all sit around each other, we're not afraid to talk about our process or afraid of saying a story that may get the chapter in trouble?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a conversation that can go on and on. I mean, it's kind of limited. Like you said, there's certain things that we want to say, but can't say or shouldn't say. I just know that for me, this is heartbreaking. When I look at that baby's picture, when I think of his family, when I think of even the families of those young men who were there and present, I just, like I said, it's heartbreaking to me. And it really makes me fearful of the future of our organizations that we both love so much. So, we can revisit this. We'll always recycle our F words and come back and visit other topics. I would love to get your feedback in our comments. If you have any questions, just what your thoughts are on what has happened down at Southern University, at Baton Rouge. I don't want to keep saying at Southern University, because this incident did not happen on the campus of Southern University. Correct. But I would just love to get your feedback on it. And if you are a part of an organization, we would just love to hear from you. So we thank you for joining us again this week on a new episode of F It. We will see you next week. Please do not forget to share, to subscribe, and let us, talk in the comments. Thank you again. This is F It with Aikisha and Willie Cologne.
Peace.